Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can use your Helix and use it to send MIDI commands to other pieces of gear. So you'll be able to send commands from your Helix or HX Stomp to another MIDI device. For this video, I'm going to be doing this using the Helix, and I'm going to connect it to my iPad, which is going to be running a looper app, and I'm going to be programming my Helix to send MIDI messages to control my looper. However, using the information in this video, you should be able to use this in order to control other MIDI devices and apply this to whatever you need. Two things right off the bat. This isn't going to be a video explaining MIDI, so if you're brand new to MIDI, you'll probably be able to follow along, but you won't really understand what's going on. But I do have a complete guide about understanding MIDI program changes, channels, controller changes, values, and stuff like that. Really helpful video. I would watch that first if you really want to understand MIDI and understand MIDI programming, and then come back and watch this video. The other thing to keep in mind, this is not about having the Helix receive MIDI information where your computer tells your Helix, oh, turn on the distortion during the chorus, turn on my reverb during the solo and stuff like that. This is about sending MIDI information. So when you push a button on your Helix, it sends a command to, in my case, trigger loop 1 on my looper. If you are interested in how to control your Helix or your HX Stomp with MIDI so you never have to pedal dance again, I do have videos available for both how to do that on the Helix and how to do that on the HX Stomp. So check those out if that's what you're looking for. However, if you are ready to use your Helix basically as a MIDI controller, this is the video for you. So we're going to do some of the boring stuff first. You do have to set up a few things in order to make this happen. If you already know some of the stuff, you can use some of the timestamps down below in order to skip around. But if you skip some of the steps, it might not work. I also will be doing some more advanced things at the end of this video as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first off, you have to know what are your options in order to send MIDI out of your Helix. So with all of the Helix units, they all have the options of either sending standard 5-pin MIDI or USB MIDI. So if your Helix is going to control another MIDI device over standard 5-pin MIDI, plug in a 5-pin MIDI cable into the out of your Helix and plug it into the in on whatever device you're trying to control. If you're trying to do it over USB, you're going to need a cable like this, and you're going to plug one end into the USB of the Helix, and you're going to plug, the USB-A into the device that you are trying to control. Obviously, they have different configurations for that as well, since USB has 8 billion different versions of it. But the idea is the same. However, I am going to be doing this wirelessly with the WIDI Master. Now, I did a video on the WIDI Master. It converts the 5-pin MIDI into wireless Bluetooth MIDI. So check that out if you're interested in doing that. Of course, I'm going to be doing wireless. If you've seen my channel, I'm obsessed with wireless and just makes things easier to film. I actually do gig with this, and it is very reliable as well. Check out my video if you're interested in wireless MIDI. All right, so now that you know how you're going to connect it, you have to go and do some global setting configurations. I know it's boring, you just want to start programming, but if you don't do some of this at the beginning, it's not going to work, and you have to configure your Helix accordingly. So push the 3-line button up here and go to global settings. Now what you're going to do is you're going to scroll over to the MIDI and tempo tab over here, and there's a couple of things we're going to go over here. So the MIDI base channel, this is what channel your Helix receives info on. So this isn't going to matter actually, because you're going to send MIDI out on different channels. MIDI through you want to turn on if you are going to daisy chain. If you want the output to act as a through, meaning that any signal coming in the input, you want to daisy chain and pass out, you would want to turn that on. Only if you want the MIDI info going in to also go out to the next device. Mine is currently off. Receive, we're not worrying about, and we're focusing on send. Are you going to be sending MIDI clock information? If so, are you going to be doing it over MIDI, USB, or both? I'm not going to be sending MIDI clock information for this, so I'm going to turn that off. Scrolling over, MIDI over USB. Are you going to be using MIDI over USB? If so, you need to turn that on. Otherwise, it will not work. Receive, again, we're not worrying about that. Are you going to be sending program change information out of this? So are you going to be using this to control other gear with just controller changes, just CC messages? Or are you going to be using program change messages, PC messages? If you are going to be using them, are you sending it out just MIDI, just USB, or both MIDI and USB. I leave that on both. These two are more advanced, which I will get to at the end. They are valuable to know, but it is a more advanced, so let's get into the programming before we do that. Now that we've got our configuration set up, and you will have to, kind of trial and error, but for the most part, that should get you ready. Okay, so as of shooting this video, there isn't a way to just, you normally where you assign a block and you go in and you say, I want to use a MIDI, button or something like that. You don't have a way to do that when you assign these blocks. So the way that you do this is you're going to push these 3 line buttons right here, and you're going to go to the command center. I did a whole video explaining the command center in depth if you want to know more about it. What you're going to do is you can see all these buttons right here. These control the foot switches, and that's what we're going to go over. You can do this with the expression pedals as well. So expression 1, expression 2. The idea is still the same if you want to send MIDI, but for this one, just for ease of programming, I'm just going to show you with the foot switches. So what you're going to do in here is you're going to decide what foot switch you want to do. In this case, I'm going to choose foot switch 2. And what command am I going to send? I'm going to say MIDI CC in this case. You do have other options, CC toggle, bank or program, note, you can send notes, but I'm going to do MIDI CC. So MIDI CC is where you're going to send one MIDI CC command. So I'm going to send MIDI CC 100 at a value of 127. That's what I'm going to say. If you wanted to toggle between 2 of them, that's where you would do CC toggle. So I would say, same thing, MIDI CC 100, and it would switch between sending the value of 0 and the value of 127. Again, for simplicity, I'm going to make this just MIDI CC. What MIDI channel do I want to send out? So if I have it set to bass, remember where we have in our global settings, what is the bass channel? This is 4, so it'll send out on MIDI channel 4. I usually try to avoid doing that, so I'm not actually going to do that. I'm going to say send this out on MIDI channel 6. Because the way that I have it when I'm controlling multiple devices, everything on MIDI channel 4 is going to control the Helix. Everything on MIDI channel 6 will control the device I'm going to control for this video. What CC? Again, I'm going to set it to 100 and the value to 127. So now this is going to send out MIDI CC channel 6, MIDI CC 100, value of 127. And what you can do is you can see right now, it just says CC value. This is why I wanted to demo this on the full Helix, because you can customize the name of this. And for this demo, I'm going to be controlling my looper on my iPad. So I'm going to call this loop 1. And you can change the color of it too. So you can see, the colors changing here, red, dark orange. So I can set it to red for this one. Hit OK. So now when I trigger this button, what it's doing, it's sending out on MIDI channel 6, MIDI CC 100 at a value of 127, and it's just sending that out once. Again, if I set that to toggle, the toggle mode, it'll switch between turning on and turning off. But I just want to send just that button one time. That's what I want to do. If you're not following me, just wait a minute and it should make sense here in a little bit. But now over here, I want this to be MIDI CC on channel 6 again. For the next button is going to be CC 100, and the value again will be 127. I'm going to call this loop 2. I'm going to change the color to orange. And then the next one, I'm going to set this to, again, MIDI channel 6, CC of 102, value of 127. And I'm going to set this one to erase. So that's what I want this one to do. This one will trigger loop 1, this will trigger loop 2, and this will erase both of the loops. And let's set that one to yellow. So now that's what I have. I have this foot switch is sending CC 100. This one is sending 101. This one is sending 102. All on MIDI channel 6, and the value is at 127, right? So far, so good. Again, if it's not making sense, give it a second. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using this to control the looper. This is actually the looper that I use when I gig live as a live looper. It's called Quantaloop. Awesome, awesome program. I did a video on it if you are interested in checking that out. But, again, I do have this connected wirelessly via the WIDI Master here. Is connected wirelessly to my iPad. And what I'm going to do now is everybody's MIDI controller, whatever you are trying to control, is going to be different. I'm going to show you how to do it on this. So this looper, it's set. This is loop 1, this is loop 2, this is loop 3, and this is either loop 4 or start and stop all of them, which is how I have it configured. Sometimes you'll have to look in the manual. In order to trigger track 1, it'll say you must send MIDI CC 100, at a value of 127 or something like that, and there's no way to edit it. So for example, if I want to control the Helix, in order to turn on or off foot switch 8, I need to send MIDI CC 55. That is predetermined in the manual to control foot switch 8. Or if I want to play the looper in the Helix, I need to send MIDI CC 61 at a value between 64 and 127. And in order to stop a loop, I need to send it MIDI CC 61 at a value between 0 and 63. That is predetermined by the Helix. I don't have a way to edit that. In order to trigger those commands, I need to send the specific MIDI commands. However, a lot of devices, such as this one, you can manually assign the assignments. So on this one, I'm going to go to the MIDI programming, and this is MIDI input. So do I want MIDI control? Yes. And this is Bluetooth MIDI, how I connect it to the WIDI master. What channel do I want to receive MIDI info on? If you remember, I had it set where all of our buttons are sending on MIDI channel 6, which is what I want. Because I am sending information out of the Helix on MIDI channel 6, the Quantaloop app needs to receive info on MIDI channel 6. That's why I have it set here to receive on MIDI channel 6. I'll show you the MIDI controller assignments in a second. And do I want to accept MIDI program changes? And I'm going to say yes for this one. I'll show you why later. But MIDI controller assignments. Right now, it says there's no assignments assigned. What's cool about this, and what most gear does now, is you push the plus symbol, and I can either manually put this in, or I can hit learn. And what it'll say is it's waiting for a command. So I'm going to push loop 1, and it said, oh, you sent MIDI CC 100. Right? Now, I can say, do I want this to be a momentary, a latching, or a continuous control? You will have to mess with those. Mine's going to be latching. So now it's saying, what would you like this button to do? I want this to record, play, and overdub on track 1. That is what I would like. Hit save, and now it is saved as such. So now, when I push this button, it'll start recording on track 1. So I push this button, and you can see it's recording my voice right now on loop 1. And then when I push it again, it'll stop recording and loop it. I'm just going to turn the volume off on that so you don't hear that. And then I can push it again, and it goes into overdub mode. Push it again, and it's just in play mode. Double tap it, and it stops it. That's how Quantaloop works. It's just the same as if I pushed this button, pushed it again, or double tapped it. It's the same idea. So now this button is sending that MIDI command to this in order to trigger loop 1. So now let's do another one. So I'm going to say MIDI controller assignments. I would like to assign a new one. Learn. I want you to learn this one. It found MIDI CC 101, just like we said. I'm going to assign this to control the start and stop of track 2. Let me turn the volume down on that again. Push it. Now it has triggered track 2. Push it again. It is stopped recording on track 2. Make sense? And again, you're going to have to look at your MIDI devices in order to figure out how to assign it. If it has the learn feature, which a lot of them do, that's really nice. However, if they don't, for example, and it has to be a specific one, you'll have to look in the manual and what you'll do. So for example, if I look in the manual and it says, hey, in order to clear all, you need to send MIDI CC 102 in order to do that. Let's pretend, that is the command that you need to do. It says, if you want to stop everything, you need to send CC 102. That's why in here, in the command center, on this third button, I set it to MIDI CC channel 6 because that's what the app reads on, MIDI CC 102. This one doesn't specify the value, so you'd have to mess around with it. Is it a value of 0 or is it a value of 127? You'll have to mess with that. Or is it a toggle, right? So again, you will have to mess with that. But now when I hit erase, you'll watch and it'll erase everything. All the tracks are now deleted. So again, just to recap, I can either say I would like my device that I want to control with MIDI. I can assign it by learning. I can say I would like when I send this button, which just happens to be CC 100 on channel 6, I would like to turn on and off track 2. Or if your device says, in order to do a certain command, in this case, clear all the tracks, you must send CC 102, then you would have to go into the command center and set that CC value to 102 in order to make that work. You can also just manually do it like I'm doing right now. So I can say when Quantaloop receives the command CC 102, I'm going to manually choose that. I want it to erase everything. So if you don't have learn, you can also manually do it yourself. Okay, so some information about program changes. So I'm going to assign this first foot switch to send a program change. So what you're going to do is you're going to switch this over to bank/program. And again, I'm going to set this to MIDI channel 6 because that's what this receives on. This stuff is a little more advanced, and I actually have to look up the least significant byte and most significant byte, and that stuff confuses me, to be honest. Eventually, I'll do a video on it. But this is the one you want to focus on, is a program change. So what program change message do you want to send? So I'm going to send MIDI program change 20. And again, you can customize it if you want, but I'm just going to leave it as is. So what a program change does in this app, and most of the time what it'll do, it'll load different banks or like presets and stuff like that. So on this one, what it does with the looper, so I can have different songs saved, and I do this isn't the device that I use for looping, it's another one, but I'm using that to get video footage of what I'm filming right now. So, I have different songs, so I would put, Ring of Fire right here, Save Tonight right here, Sex and Candy right here, and I would have them set up as different loops. So when I trigger this PC change, it's going to load. Watch what happens. So you can see what preset it's on right here, which is A0, but when I push this button, it's going to load C0. So it's now loaded a different bank down here. So that can be definitely very valuable. I use that all the time. Another way that you can do this though, and this is, so remember how I mentioned in the global settings, do you want to duplicate a PC send on or off? So what that means is when you load a certain bank, so if I load this first bank here, it will send program change 0. If I load this one, it'll send program change 1. Right now it's not doing anything because I have the global settings set to not send the duplicate PC send. Now, when I turn that on, what happens when I load this preset, it's going to send program change 02, and you'll watch it change up here. So it is not. Oh, it's not doing it. I know why, because I'm sending it out on program change 4, because that's what the base channel is here. So if I set this to receive on channel 4, that'll change all my other commands. But watch, now it'll load A2, right? This one will load A0. This one will load A1. This one will load A5, and so on and so forth. So if you want the Helix to send a program change when you load a specific bank, so that can be very helpful. Just keep, also one thing just to keep in mind, you might see mine 0, 1, 2, 3. You might have it as like 01A, 01B. You can change that in your global settings under preferences, your preset numbering. So it's either 0 to 127 or 01A through 32D. I like it this one just so because I do a lot of MIDI programming, so that helps me. So that's an option of sending program changes. You can either, I didn't save it. So you can assign it in the command center by doing this. What program change would you like to do? And that is nice because this one I can change, I want to send it on channel 6 because again, I have this one receiving on channel 6, so that can be very helpful. And then one final thing I want to show you, which again, under your global settings, under MIDI and tempo, the Snapshot CC Send. So what this does is if you use snapshots, which I do have a video on snapshots, it's the way to use the Helix in my opinion, so check that out. The Helix already is programmed to send out, if you push the snapshot button and this Snapshot CC Send is on, it sends controller 69, nice. And what value is it? So if you push this first one, it sends out a value of 0. Snapshot 2 is a value of 1. Snapshot 3 is a value of 2. Snapshot 7, it sends a value of 6, and so on and so forth. So again, I can use that knowledge and say, when I receive, I do have to set this to 4 just for right now, because again, it is sending, what channel is it sending out by the base channel, MIDI assign, plus, and I'm going to manually do this. I'm going to say MIDI number 69. How many memes am I going to use while editing this for that? And what action do I want that to do? So I'm going to say dub mode. This will turn on and off dub mode, which you can see with this button right here. So when I push the button, it turns on and off dub mode. This one. Well, so any of the snapshots do it because right now, so these next few minutes are me just trying to figure this out because it's not working. I'm going to leave this in here just so you guys can see how much MIDI headache is involved, even from someone who is doing a MIDI tutorial, who has done plenty of MIDI stuff. Hopefully it helps you realize that the headache that you feel programming MIDI is not just you. Okay, so I have to set that to momentary. Let's set that to dub mode. I mean, I guess it's good that I'm making all these mistakes so you guys can see how, I do tons of MIDI programming and still see how much of a headache it is every time when you're doing MIDI programming stuff. Just always plan for a MIDI headache. Hopefully this works actually. I don't even know if it will. Okay, it says 6. So now when it receives, so right now it's not getting anything, but when it receives a value of 6, Ah, see, it's not even doing it. Oh, so I don't know why it would do it from there. That I don't even know. That confuses me. So why? So it should be this button that changes it. So it must read it one button up. I don't, this stuff, you see how much of a headache this is? But so this button is now turning it on and off because I have it assigned to read MIDI number 69 at a value of 6, only at a value of 6, and then it'll turn on and off dub mode. Just a little more advanced way to use the Helix, and that's to use these commands right here. So if you don't want the snapshots to send a CC command, turn this off. If you do, turn it on. If you want your banks to send a program change command, turn this on. If you don't, turn it off. Whew, that was a lot. So that's basically it. Did that help you guys out? If so, if you made it to the end of this video, I'm assuming you got use out of it. Please do me a favor, just hit the thumbs up button. I know how annoying it is to ask for it. It's really annoying on my end. I'm sure it's annoying to hear it from like every YouTube video that you watch, but it truly does help. It really does feed the algorithm. So I would appreciate it if you just took a second to do that. And if you did find this content helpful, you know, I've done so many Helix and HX Stomp videos. You can always subscribe and see more videos when I put those out. So that also is another free way to support the channel. So that's basically it. Let me know as a comment down below on how you plan on using this. I'm definitely curious on how everybody plans to use this for their setup. What are you trying to control? How do you use your Helix to control other devices? It's just nice how much the Helix can do. Check out some of my other videos that I've done on the Helix. I did one all about global settings, which is really helpful. I've done ones all about the command center. So if you want a really in-depth guide on the command center, you can check that out. I've done so many different videos on Helix and HX Stomp. You can also check out my playlist by clicking the link on the screen now. Don't forget to follow me on my social media pages at Scott Ewell Music on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you guys again for watching. If you have any other video recommendations that you would like for a Helix video, please leave a comment down below as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.